Are you good, John? Hello, everybody. Hello? Can you hear me? No. Oh.
There you go. Yeah, they only need to show me like 5 times before I get it. I haven't been here 2.5 years. How does the microphone work? I don't know. Thank you everybody for being here for our first time back in person in 2.5 years. Woo! Yeah. And also thank you to the people attending online. It's, there's not a lot of great things about a pandemic, but I'm really excited about this advance of technology where people can attend from all over. And eventually, sometime, I think we're going to have authors from all over up here on this screen. So, I mean, that's really exciting developments, right? Yeah. So we are going to begin now. And as usual, we have a guest speaker who will come and talk about something to do with the arts and crafts or business of writing. And after that, we will have our 4 readers and we'll have a little break in between and we might like pass a picture to see if we can get donations. Although I don't know if anybody carries cash anymore. We'll see, let's try it. But if you don't carry cash, we do have a PayPal link that you can find on our website to give us the money. As usual with these things, we're going to start with the land acknowledgement. So we wish to acknowledge that Brockton organizers do our work on the land of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit. And we acknowledge the ways that genocide and colonialism affect the world to this day, and that we all have an obligation to support the rights of Indigenous people. And that means everything from missing and murdered women and girls to supporting land defenders and to the land back movement, which is not a metaphor. It's not a nice to have. It's like, why is there crown land, right? Give that land back. Give as much land back as possible. And they are the stewards of the environment. Like, let's listen. And with that, we will move on to our, oh yes, how can I forget this? And Black Lives Matter, and Islamophobia is wrong. And we fight or against all forms of discrimination and oppression. And we make it a mandate, part of our mandate, to represent diverse voices in our lineup. So that's, young, old, racially disabled, new and emerging, all kinds of diversity is who we want to see up here. And hopefully you do see that in our lineups today and ongoingly every other month here at Brockton and on YouTube. So I would like to invite Emily up to introduce our guest speaker.
Right. So as Dorian mentioned, we'll start with the guest speaker and then there'll be a brief Q&A and then our 4 readers. And Brockton Writers Series was founded in November 2009. And one of the founders is here in the room tonight and we're really excited about it. Welcome back, Rosanna. So we've been bringing literary goodness to Toronto for over a decade. Our nimble Brockton volunteers are Jen Albert, Nancy K. Clark, Ellen Trolley, Dorian Emerton, who you just met, Sonia Patari, and I'm Emily Sanford. If you're interested in joining this amazing team, please check in with us after the readings or send us an email. We would love to hear from you. We would like to acknowledge with deep thanks the continued support of the Ontario Arts Council who make this series possible. Special thanks, especially this week because the check just came in. So we are very excited. So thank you. Thank you. And finally, our sincerest thanks of all to you, our audience, for being here with us tonight. We're also glad you're tuning in for those of us who aren't here with us tonight and ongoing. Now on to our guest speaker. Kathy Friedman is a writer, teacher, editor, and the co-founder of Inkwell Workshops, which delivers free literary programming to people with mental health and addiction issues. She studied creative writing at UBC and the University of Guelph and was a finalist for the Writers' Trust Bronwyn Wallace Award for Emerging Writers. Her writing has appeared in publications such as Grain, Geist, Prism International, Canadian Notes and Queries, and the New Quarterly. In 2002, her short fiction debut, All the Shining People, was published by House of Anansi. Congratulations, by the way. She lives in Toronto, where she is at work on a collection of essays about travel, music, and mental health. Kathy, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
There's also a plug if you need it. Do you need the sound as well? No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give you this one. Turn it on there, and I'm gonna take this one from
Hello. Hello.
All right. Oh, and my slides are up. Should it? How bad? How it's supposed to look? You can full screen it. Yeah, can I full screen it? Yeah. Slideshow. The slideshow. Yeah. There we go.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. It's so exciting to be in person. This is the first thing I've done in person, and I don't even know how long. Anyways, I have this. Oh, what did I do with my notes? I left them on the table.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so my talk is on writing and survival. Some tips for mad, sad, and neurodiverse people. I am one of them. I use the term neurodiverse broadly to mean people with unique minds. Personally, I live with chronic mental illness, including complex PTSD. And just a short content note, which hopefully you could see up there. What I mean by self-care, if you need to step out for self-care, I know that mental health can be a bit of a triggering topic. I'm not going to be talking about anything, particularly in depth. But if you do need to, step out, go to the bathroom, take a break, whatever it is, I encourage you to do that. So my agenda for today is a little bit about me and about mad arts. I use the term mad and mad pride, mad arts. Personally, I found those terms a little bit triggering for a while. It took a while for me to embrace them. So if you fit into that category or you feel like you might fit, but you feel like the term isn't right for you, that's totally cool. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about mad arts. I'm going to talk about how I write and survive, resources, and Q&A. I put Q&A at the end, but honestly, if you have questions, please just let me know online as well. I think Jen is monitoring the live feed for folks online. But yeah, I'm more interested in questions and like a conversation than in getting through all my materials. So please just, ask away. So a little bit about me, some descriptors just in terms of where I'm coming from and how I'm positioned socially. I'm a white settler, immigrant, cis, queer, Jewish. I was born in South Africa and now I am Canadian and I am also mad. I recently published my first book, as you heard in my lovely intro. It's a collection of short stories called All the Shining People. Come chat with me afterwards if you have questions about it, or if you'd like to buy a copy. I have copies. I don't think Glad Day has copies, so come talk to me. Otherwise, I'd be like, go talk to the bookstore. They're better. I am a creative writing professor at Humber College. That's why I have this very fancy clicker. I am also the co-founder and artistic director of Inkwell. If you're interested in hearing more about Inkwell, please do go to our website. There's lots of great resources, and we've just launched a scholarship for writers with lived experience to work with a mentor for anyone who's working on a book-length project. So please do check us out if that's of interest. So I want to talk a little bit about mad arts. This is the definition from the Canada Council. Basically, I think mad and disability arts is some of the most exciting stuff that's happening right now. And it's really exciting to me to kind of be under that umbrella. So from the Canada Council, mad arts are created by people who live with madness, and they're an expression of mad pride. The term mad has been reclaimed by people who identify as living with mental illness or psychiatric disabilities. It symbolizes pride, collective identity, and community building. Within this context, mental illness is not framed as pathology, but rather it's integral to identity and experiences shaped by social determinants of health, such as income, social status, employment, working conditions, housing, and food security. So I really like this idea that that obviously that madness, disability, it's a social model as opposed to a medical model that says, there's something wrong with us, there's some kind of pathology, we have these symptoms and we need to be fixed. I'm really into the idea of celebrating who we are and what we have to offer the world, and giving mad folks the support that we need in order to thrive. And I really think that part of that is telling our stories. I would have liked to call this presentation Writing and Thriving, but I don't think that we're there quite yet. Mad folks still need far better access to secure housing, good food, clean water, and the abolition of carceral forms of punishment, surveillance, and care. And that, of course, goes for racialized mad folks in particular. Still, liberation and joy are always bound up in revolutionary art and storytelling, and as writers, we have a really important role, I think, to play in mad pride and mad liberation. On that topic, this is Wilda White. I was going to show a little bit of her talk, but I don't know if there's time, especially if there's going to be questions. And also, it's complicated a little bit technologically with the live stream. But in her 2018 speech, Crazy Lives Matter Too, Imagining a World where Everyone is Valued, this psychiatric survivor, lawyer, and activist, Wilda White, talked about what she believes is at the root of mad people's oppression, which is the idea that when we speak, we're not believed, especially when there are people that what we say contradicts people who society deems to be more credible than us. And she really contextualizes this oppression amongst feminist and Black Lives Matters movements. And gives us a way forward as writers, because through telling our stories, not just of medical illness and recovery, but stories of mad history, mad pride, and stories that honor and celebrate our amazing community, that we can move forward. So I find that really powerful, and I really encourage you. The link is up there, and I'll share it as well. I know I've got to share some stuff with Brockton for their blog, so please do take a look if you're interested in the topic, because it's just such a phenomenal talk, and it really, really inspires me as a writer and as kind of a community organizer in the Mad Pride community. So here's my slide on how I write and survive. So these are some things that I do in order to just kind of keep going as a writer. And there's nothing up here that I don't know is like revolutionary, I guess, but there are things that I constantly have to remind myself and things that I constantly have to do. I remember recently telling my therapist, like, I thought self-care was just like, you take a bath once in a while and you like moisturize afterwards. That was like, oh wow, like I'm doing self-care, this is amazing. And it turns out it's actually this relentless like day-to-day process of doing things to take care of myself, including things like setting and enforcing boundaries, exercising, giving myself treats, cuddling my cat, and just things that I have to do every day, even and especially when I feel like I'm at my worst. The other thing that is really Oh, I guess the most powerful method of self-care I found personally is just giving myself props. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household, and it's not something that I was ever used to saying to myself, like, hey, you're doing awesome. You got this, you're doing great. And that, it turns out, is one of my biggest methods of self-care, which like I had to learn. Community is huge for me, writing community, mad community. And I include amongst my community, my mentors, my teachers, and my students as well. It's really what keeps me going. And I think, you know, if you're here, you're probably interested in community, or if you're joining us in line, you're probably interested in writing community. One of the biggest things that I do is think in terms of gratitude and generosity, like how can I show my gratitude to the folks who've helped me be here? And then also how can I extend that gratitude through generosity, through helping, like paying it forward and helping other folks. And that way we all kind of rise together. And those of us who are rising a little faster can kind of reach down and help everyone along. And that's just, it really is what's kept me going. It took me a long time to write my first book, and it was hard at times. And honestly, it was just having people around me to, you know, when my own voice falters a little bit, to say like, you got this, you can do this, you're awesome, you know? Yeah.
Is that what you, I don't quite understand what you mean by writing community.
So for me, my writing community is friends who are writers, just being around people who are writers and who are readers and who are interested and who understand what it's like to face a blank page and keep going and have the courage to face a blank page. You know, so yeah, writers, people, folks who work in publishing, all of that that community. Does that make sense? Yeah, good question. Meds, my meds help me. They make me feel more stable. I do have side effects, but you know, the stability that they offer for me personally is worth it. So taking my medication every day and remembering to do that is definitely part of how I keep writing. I'm big on therapy. I've been going to therapy for like 10 years. I know there's lots of wait lists. I've done all kinds of OHIP covered therapy, and I just put my name on wait lists and like do it. I'm really into group therapy and support groups as well. I think I used to think that those were just kind of like cheaper for the government, and that was why they were offered, and that they wouldn't be that helpful. It turns out I was wrong and cynical, because there can be something really powerful about sitting in the same room as folks who are learning new skills and who've maybe had some similar experiences and sharing with them. So definitely, if you're looking at therapy options, I would say don't be cynical like me and just put your name on a wait list. Also, short-term therapy. A lot of the OHIP covered therapy that's offered right now is short-term. And in my experience, 2 out of 2 times that I've gone for short-term therapy, it's turned into something longer term. So you never know. I think that that's maybe changing with the way the healthcare system is increasingly structured, but yeah, and the other thing that I've done is just when I was looking for a therapist the last time, is just call folks up and ask them, like, do you offer sliding scale rates and how does that work? And I think that often the answers around that can be illuminating. I know for me, up until 3 weeks ago, when I got when I started my job at Humber College, and in another week or so when I have benefits, affordability and access has been a huge issue for me for a long time. So that's why I'm sort of offering these tips of, you know, what are some things you can do if financial barriers are an issue for you as well. The last point that I have up here is just rest. Like, take your time, take breaks, rest. I take afternoon siestas whenever I can, and I sleep in whenever I can. And I certainly don't write every day or every week or every month. I write when I can, when I have the opportunity. And again, that's often balanced with other paid work and just whenever I can sneak in the time. It's really hard, I think, as a mad writer, not to compare myself to other people. And I'm constantly struggling with that, like the feeling that I'm behind or the feeling that I'm on a different schedule or timetable from other people. And so advice, I guess, to myself, or if you're like me and you're struggling with that, is just don't do that. I think that one of the cool things about being queer, one of the cool things about being mad or disabled is being on a kind of our own timeline that's a little bit different than the kind of heteronormative, have kids, capitalist, make lots of money, produce things, go in this kind of straight line, which is what we're all used to, I think. And I really like the idea that we can bend time a little bit to us and to what our minds and our bodies feel like they need. Another thing that's important for me around rest is that whenever I've experienced writer's block, and I've experienced it pretty debilitatingly, it's always been because I'm having some kind of mental or emotional block and I've needed to take time away from the work. And I always like heard the advice, like you should write always, you should write whenever you can, you should write every day, you should push yourself, you need to be disciplined, all this stuff. And so my advice to my past self, at least, is step away. Like when you need to step away from the page, you need to step away, and it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a rest. The work will still be there. It'll be there waiting for you when you come back to it. The best writing advice that I ever got was from a mentor a while ago, and I was just starting out on my book that I've just published. And this would have been about like 9 or 10 years ago when I was just starting out, and I was really freaking out. I was having a bad day. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? Am I just supposed to like have faith that I can do this? Am I just supposed to like believe in myself that like one day I'll be able to write a book and someone will publish it and someone else will want to read it? And like, this is actually a thing that could happen. Am I just supposed to like believe that? And she was like, no, it's not faith. You don't need to have faith. It's not about faith. It's about love. It's about just continually coming back to your love for the work. And that's what I've taken with me. And I'll always remember that piece of advice. So I really like this quote that I found about crypt time. Living within crypt time lets me define my own normal. And like I said, that's a constant struggle for me, is what a normal pace is and what a normal amount of like productivity looks like. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time, and if there's questions. About 5 minutes. Okay. And then are there questions, or is that including questions?
We have about 10 minutes in total.
In total,
Yeah.
okay. So I won't go through this too comprehensively. Again, I'll kind of throw this up online, but Inkwell, as I mentioned, check us out. Open Minds Quarterly, I always recommend. They're a really cool literary magazine up in Northern Ontario, run by mad folks for mad folks, publishing literature. They don't pay except for a poetry contest that they run annually. So normally I don't recommend places that don't pay, except I just think they're really cool. So even though they don't pay, I think you should submit to them if that's of interest. Community health centers. I used to work for community health centers for about 6 or 7 years. They're really awesome. If you need primary medical care, they also offer free time-limited therapy, as well as therapy groups. And they really focus on communities that have barriers to accessing healthcare. So a lot of them are geographically kind of limited by catchment area, but there's some priority groups that extend beyond that catchment area. So it's something to check out by Googling or calling 211 if you're in need of some healthcare. The Artist Health Center, also really awesome. They're a nurse practitioner-led health center out of Toronto Western Hospital. The thing about them that I found super helpful is they have this fund where, again, if finances are a barrier, you can apply for it, you can get it, and you can get like things like massage and psychotherapy, acupuncture, naturopathy, physio, all this stuff for really, really cheap. They pay 75% of the cost. So there was a while, I get really bad muscle tension and headaches as part of kind of the PTSD that I deal with. And there was a while where I was going and I was getting like $20 professional massages for a year. It was really, really nice. And it really helped. So definitely recommend the Artist Health Center. They've got a lot of great therapy groups and programming as well that really focuses on artists and our needs. Here's some options for affordable medication. If, like me, there was a long time where even just going to the pharmacy and affording medication was a challenge. So I'll just, again, leave that up there and leave that for online. Workman Arts is a really great organization for artists. It's an interdisciplinary arts organization, something that helps me because I'm really serious and I put all this pressure on myself about writing, but it really helps me to do things that are creative that I don't put as much pressure on myself around. So I was in a choir for Mad People for a while. That was really fun. And more recently, I've been doing these dance classes on Zoom. For Mad People, it's called Permission to Move. And I really like those classes. It's really a lot of fun. And again, it's important for me to have a creative outlet that I'm not super intense about because I can get kind of intense about writing. Diaspora Dialogues are great, free mentorship for diverse writers. Now they're offering the mentorships across Canada. And of course, the Fold Festival of Literary Diversity has fantastic programming, and they have it year round. They've got their free monthly webinars are just really wonderful, and I've learned a lot from them. So definitely recommend the Fold as well. Okay. If there are no questions, I will talk a little bit in my last few minutes about writing grants, because there's lots of resources for disabled artists, and some of it I found out not through the arts councils, but just through kind of word of mouth. And I would like to be that word of mouth for you. If you identify as disabled and you are working on a book-length project and you're interested in learning more about grants, first, as a disabled artist, you can get access to accessibility support. So you can get a service provider to actually help you write the grant, and they will pay the service provider for you. That's at the municipal, provincial, and federal arts councils. So definitely recommend that as long as you're comfortable identifying as disabled to the arts councils. If your application is successful, you can also apply for accessibility support. So I've applied and been successful to get funding for counseling to help me when I'm working through triggering nonfiction material, for example. And that's been like an absolute lifeline. Like I wouldn't be able to write the project without that therapeutic support. So I really, I had no idea until a fellow like Mad artist told me that counseling was one of the things offered as an accessibility support to disabled writers. There are disability arts programs that are offered through the Canada Council and the Ontario Arts Council. Toronto Arts Council doesn't have it, but if you wanted to apply for a writing grant and you're more comfortable with your application being looked at by other disabled artists and sort of considered under a disability arts envelope as opposed to a literature envelope, then apply for disability arts or deaf and disability arts projects. It's a really great programming that they have provincially and federally. Oh, and my last bit of advice is just not to be afraid of the program officer and intimidated by them the way I was when I was starting out. They're super helpful and they have great advice. And I always look for excuses to have like a phone call with them. So I can just be like, what advice do you give people? And they usually have advice that they trot off that's like, oh, I never thought of that. That's great. So super duper recommend talking to your program officer, especially if you're a first-time applicant. They're really helpful and they just want to support writers and get you money. And that's it. That's my presentation, writing and survival. Anyone have any questions or comments? Anything online? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, did you have a question, Michelle? No?
I was just going to say, everyone that, not everyone, but many of the people that have given talks have talked about grants, getting grants. And I'm only at the stage of collecting my poems. So in my mind, I see getting a grant like 10 years down the road. So should I just like ignore that for right now?
It's really up to you. The grants are usually creation grants. So if you're writing poetry and you're collecting your poems, you can absolutely apply for a grant to help support you in that work. The grants are not there sort of for when you're ready to be published. they're there to support you in your writing time and in your kind of editing time and revision. So it's really up to you. Grant writing can be a lot of work, and it can be, you know, you're sort of putting yourself out there for rejection, which can be tough. But if you feel like you're ready to take that step, then I absolutely encourage you to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Great. Well, thanks so much. And thank you so much, Brockton, for having me tonight.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That was great. I took so many notes. Like if you see me on my phone, I'm taking notes on my phone. I'm not like twittering during these fascinating things. Yeah, that was very, very helpful. So yes, so we're on YouTube now as well as in person. So even if you're here in person, it would be great when you get home and you get on your computer, if you would load up YouTube and you would like and subscribe. You know, my kid watches YouTube Gamers and they're always like and subscribe. And then the pandemic happened and we went on YouTube and I'm like, oh no, we really do need people to like and subscribe. It helps us get noticed. It helps us put, you know, our videos get in front of other people's eyes, which helps the exposure of everybody else you see up here, right? So please like and subscribe. We would also, I said maybe we do the picture. Are we not going to do the picture?
We can do the picture, but we can also do tap. We'll do the picture.
Yeah. Okay, we got a picture.
If nobody does cash, you can always go into PayPal online.
Yeah, so if you don't have cash on you, you can do PayPal online, but here's a picture that you can put money in. We pay everybody that reads and speaks for us. So you're supporting, you know, local independent artists by throwing your change in there if you have change these days. So yes, and if not, go to paypal.me/Brockton Writers. You can find that link on our page if you're not going to remember that. And also we value your opinion. So if you'd like to, oh yes, awesome. We have a volunteer for the picture. Picture volunteers. This is what we like. Yes, so we have a survey that we would like you to fill out. So our survey is also online. And you can also, if you sign up for our newsletter, you will also get it. So if you take our survey, you'll be able to fill out topics that you'd like future guest speakers to talk about. So if you're just like, that was amazing, I want to hear more specifically about, you know, the grants, you can put that in. Or if you're like, I want to hear about something else, I want to hear about, I don't know, how to write a cookbook. Sure, put that in. Tell us what you want to hear about, right? And you can also give us suggestions for writers that you'd like to hear up here. So fill out our survey, tell us what you want to see. And now for the readers. Yeah? Does anybody need to pee? Anybody need to pee break? No? We're good? Okay. Pee break. We used to have a pee break at this point. And then we're just like, you know, we're on YouTube. You don't, let's go out to the lobby. Let's go out to the lobby. If nobody needs a pee break, we'll like barrel right on forward with the readers. So, oh, we didn't have time for a huddle to do a pronunciation check, which we've been used to doing online before our things. So is it Uba Osman? Okay. Uba Osman is a writer and poet. She's been published in 2035 Africa, an anthology of contemporary poetry, the New Quarterly and CV2, among others. Her chapbook titled Hereditary Blue was published by Anstruther Press in 2019 and was shortlisted for the VP Nickel Chapbook Award, very prestigious. She is an MFA graduate from University of Guelph. Uba is based in Scarborough, Canada. Welcome to our series.
Hi everyone. Thank you to Brockton so much for having me. This story that I'm about to read is Thank you. This story that I'm about to read is going to be published in the next issue of Guts. So you can read it there if you'd like. Called The Umbrella. And I haven't read for a long time. So this is like very exciting to be in a room full of people. Richard brought a painting home. It was a painting of a man holding an umbrella. Or he wasn't holding an umbrella. It was a painting of several men falling from the sky like drops of rain. None of those men had an umbrella. I asked him what the painting was on about. What do you mean? He said. I looked at him and then at the print that he was now fastening to our living room wall. What do you mean? What do I mean? I'm not sure I understand your question, he flinched as he lifted the framed image into place. His arms were strong and deliberate. He left it there just like that. I had to look at it every single day. I hated everything about that fucking painting. And the worst part was that I couldn't exactly understand what he liked about it. He was suddenly choosing to be immersed in something completely foreign to me. A few days later, at a secondhand shop, he found another print. This one did have an umbrella in it. Of that, I'm sure. What's this one about? I asked him. You see, I wanted to know why in the world this man I had known for 14 years of my life was interested in this painting. I thought this natural curiosity might bring us closer, might help me learn something about him, and maybe endear him to me. But he seemed put off by the whole thing. What do you mean? He said, smiling at the painting in his arms. Look at that. For a second, just a second, I thought he had been speaking to me. So I looked at the painting. I saw a man with an umbrella covering his face. I saw nothing. I felt as if his interest was some secret I wasn't in on. I realized he was not speaking to me, but to himself, or to the painting. I'm not sure. Even though I now knew he was not talking to me, I said, look at what? He turned his body towards mine, tucking the print carefully under his arm. What's that? I sighed and looked around, finding a nice framed painting of a bouquet of white roses. How about this? I said, pointing. Quite nice, right? Very nice. Roses for my dear Rose. He winked and peered around for the register. I couldn't help feeling insulted. My name, Rose, was as ordinary as his painting, I guess. I was reminded of the Devil Wears Prada. Flowers in spring, Meryl Streep said sarcastically, pursing her lips. Revolutionary. I made a note to rewatch it, but never got to it in time. A shame. Christmas came just a few months later. I bought Richard a black umbrella with a brown bamboo-like handle, one with a sturdy curve at the end. You could easily beat someone with this umbrella if they were to attack you. Of course, if. Anyway, that morning, we sat in front of the Christmas tree, just the two of us. Richard stared at the still wrapped gift in front of him and said, "Wonder what this is?" I wasn't sure if he was joking or if he could tell it was an umbrella under there. My horrible wrapping job made the whole ordeal a bit ambiguous. I remember he had been ignoring me the day I bought that umbrella. He'd been reading about those paintings and sent me away with a dismissive wave. The umbrella cost me about $10 at the same secondhand shop he had found that hideous painting. I thought it would be nice, because Richard had become kind of obsessed with this painting. He would stand and stare at it for hours sometimes. I caught him staring at it from the dining room table when we sat to have our typical dinner of chicken and salad. He even had it as his lock screen, for fuck's sake, which used to show a picture of him and I in the Maldives. But then, the accident, and then of course he cleaned it up for me as if nothing. He did it so well, and then I didn't come apart at all. It was as if nothing happened. Same with him, but this painting was opening up a kind of chasm between us. Suddenly he was sleeping on the pull-out sofa. Suddenly he was gripping my hand tighter when we crossed the street or saw a police car, or when I carved the turkey on Thanksgiving. A drama queen, I'd say to myself, that was my Richard. A truly dramatic man. I just felt like this gift would close up that chasm just a little bit, maybe act as a small bridge. He opened the gift carefully and with the attention to detail that I always admired in him. I used birthday-themed wrapping paper that I would be sure to reuse in the future. He looked at it and ran a hand over his white hair, his eyes squinting, perplexed. His chubby fingers caught momentarily on the curls. What does that mean? I said, pointing at his face. His eyes floated down to mine. What do you mean? That expression, don't you get it? My laugh sounded like a slowly deflating balloon. He turned his head to the side, looking at the umbrella. He held it up, spinning it from the handle, around and around until it looked like a blur. Okay, he said simply, sure. His lips tightened. I'm sure this will be useful in the springtime. Thank you. He kissed my forehead. Yes. He put down the umbrella. Well, don't you love it? It's like the one from your painting. I pointed to the painting on the wall just above the couch where we sat. He stared up. Which umbrella? No, I looked up. The men were falling from the sky in tidy specks. Not that painting, this one. I pointed to the much smaller print that occupied the entranceway, blood storming inside my head. He looked at me, then into the hallway. Oh, he said, clever, yes, I see now. And he patted my knee reassuringly, the brown of his eyes dry and secretive. Thank you so much, Rose, really, I do love it. Do you? I stared with desperation into his eyes. Really? He nodded, his smile drawing a neat line across his smooth, unfamiliar face. I do. We ended the night watching television and not looking at each other. I couldn't stand the sight of his hand on my thigh and his hollow, intentional laughter that melted into the sitcom's laughter reel. Eventually, when we went to sleep, I dreamt of myself gnawing at the edge of this umbrella until all that was left was a sharp, splintered edge. When I woke up the next morning, my jaw felt sore and clicked when I opened my mouth to eat my gray oatmeal. When I had told Richard about the accident, what I had done, how badly I'd messed up, he was so pale about the whole thing. I mean, physically, because he was just at that age when his melanin was beginning to break down, but also in other aspects. He just became so drained. He attended to the details. He wiped it all clean for me. He was always meticulous until finally that painting came into his life. He seemed like someone else, someone with purpose. He had a sense of passion again, some coloring to him. Maybe he was afraid of me, of what I could do, or it was a required commitment, duty. No matter what, he was going to see me through. But all those instances were horrible. Richard's birthday came just a few months later. I stood in the kitchen wiping down every surface and thinking about the takeout I'd ordered. By this time, the house was filled with replicas he had made of the painting. He'd experiment with his impressions, sometimes using only his thumb to mimic the shapes abstractly, other times collaging magazine cutouts into frames smudged with charcoal pencil. Everything in our place was overwhelmed with these images. I could barely handle it, but if this was what I had to endure, so be it. When the food arrived, I stacked up the plates and utensils nicely. No one was coming since we had no friends. We lost contact with people very easily. Perhaps others felt comfortable accepting our newfound aloofness, like we'd done them a favor. Regardless, I prepared an impressive setup and even put extra napkins on the table. Richard was due from the store at any minute, so I made sure his place at the table was immaculate. Then I heard the key fumbling in the lock, twisting and crunching with urgency. Oh, must be stuck, just a minute. I put down the plate of fried rice on the table and rushed to the door. Just a minute, Rich. I opened the door. There, Richard, drenched. Oh, was it raining? I didn't realize. One day the blinds had been drawn in our home and we just had never opened them again. I didn't realize it was raining. Richard trudged into the space, his lapel pressed and darkened by the weight of the rain. It's nothing. He looked mangled in a way, like he'd caught more than just the rain, or perhaps something had caught him. Okay, I looked cautiously at him. Are you okay? He nodded, but seemed to be searching for something. I followed his eyes to where the umbrella leaned, lopsided against a wall, having never been used. Richard took 2 long strides towards it. Something about him looked unreal, as if cut out and pasted into the home he stood in, our home. Richard, it's nothing, Rose, really, he said. He reached down and took the umbrella in both his hands, surveying it with an indescribable conviction. And then, both hands on the curve of the handle, water dripping from every hem of him, he held the umbrella over his head and ran towards the television. Richard! Richard stabbed at the painting over and over. The umbrella didn't bend or break with the action. It was barely affected in the way that old things are made to sustain. I stared at Richard. The reflection of his figure curved in the surface of our vases, our television, the acrylic surface of our bookshelf. His face was determined. Then, as if stepping out of the whirling wind and into the eye of the storm, it all stopped. Richard looked at me and I looked at him. I could see in his eyes my own face reaching towards me. I could see in his face what was mine. And suddenly we were both laughing, not hollow laughs, but laughter of two people who shared a similar relief. A renewed purpose. Richard. I could laugh with him forever in our shared bubble. I could watch him break 1,000 stupid, pointless paintings. But Richard, my Richard, did something that he should have done a long time ago. And now the story reaches you from somewhere far away, and he is far away too. Sometimes I dream about Rich, and we're always back to that moment of peace. I can't remember anything about us before I told him what I'd done, and I don't want to, because it led us to that moment, that darling moment with the house filled with all the warm smells and the wet, muddy path he left from the door to the painting and to his final destination, me. And finally, deliciously, the painting in tatters, blue and black confetti, the immaculate umbrella hanging from the crook of his elbow like nothing had even happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'll look at an umbrella the same. Yeah. Jennifer Hossein is a Montreal-born writer, artist, and educator of Trinidadian and South Asian ancestry. Her collection of poetry, A Map of Rain Days, was longlisted for the 2021 Pat Lowther Memorial Award. Her poems, fiction and nonfiction, have been published in The Fiddlehead, The Quarantine Review, Event, and more. Welcome, Jennifer Hossein.
Turn off the projector. I will do that. Right over. We no longer need, right?
I don't know if it's. Oh, yeah. And the tiara.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here at Brockton Writers this evening in such wonderful company. I think I should lower this. How's that? Is that okay? All right.
You have a receipt, sorry, I just reminded. Oh,
Yeah, I might need it.
oh, big tall one. Okay.
Thanks. I just have a little trouble standing up for long. Well, I'm going to begin with a couple of poems about my mother. The first is the title poem of my book, and this is A Map of Rain Days. And it started, A Map of Rain Days. I am bent by the way that these things go, put my face in my hands and pull the skin taut across miles and miles. Walk down the corridors in my mother's bruised shoes. My mother's toes are crooked and curled in a misguided, arthritic map of rain days. After a few strokes, my mother was like a child. The next poem is Heart. My mother's heart begins to drift away, but we are selfish and tell her to let them fix it, and we pace and pace the days. Don't tell her, it's a poor sign. Aortic valves open and close. It keeps her herself until she is not herself. Voice crooked, face fallen, buttons askew, and pants half on the floor. I cannot begin. Beloved mother is a clipped winged bird that floats around in lace-edged nightgowns, soft skin like a schoolgirl's, shooing away the cats and always packing her clothes to go home. The next poem is called Country. It's not in the book. It was published in the Quarantine Review. On a Friday night in the pandemic, you spin me around to Wichita linemen, and I think, country? Though I have often sheltered in the houses of pale men. I've dimmed the lights and the night is a blank slate, but you don't know my country that hangs from a thread behind the smell my mother kneaded into the evenings that shifted on my skin like damnation. My aunt played country on the stereo, our silhouettes cavorting in the afternoons, while her own lineman Bo came around, tobacco teasing the day. And the following poems kind of sums up how I'm feeling about how I am feeling and how I've been feeling for a lot of my life. Silenced. I am silenced by ugly deeds, dense hands that stretch like sinew across a face, by tongues, their loudness and chatter, by nights I hold between my breaths, my tongue tied into paper cuts, skin woven into night, hands into parchment. Now I'm going to read a couple of pieces of nonfiction, and the first is 15. It's called 15. 15-year-old's bones scattered on the riverbed, the skull, the joggers, the urban myths. Where do I begin? With the glimmer and sheen of the deserted park at dusk, the naked trees and the crunch underfoot? At night, the spaces are vast and lonely. There is music and sometimes the strangled screams of women. From the window, you see nothing but your own reflection pasted over the long black fields. If you cry out for help on the street, cars pass you by. If you are dragged into the woods beside the road, no one stops. Trees are splendid, luminous beings stretching their arms to the sky. I am 15 in the land of strip malls and basement parties. There is only shopping and shoplifting, tripping out in the girls' washrooms. At lunch, I sit with the brown girls in a corner of the cafeteria. Away from their shelter, I run the gauntlet between the kids in the halls, on sidewalks, on buses. I am laughed at, spat on, shoved. When I go to see about a job, there's a man on the 54A bus. I am a lonely girl. The colors are black and blue. The black of his hands over my eyes, of the floor, a sliver of blue sky. I look for love with one of any of the men I meet. In their dusty apartments, I sit at secondhand formica tables that smell of Ajax and old toast. The Spanish painter speaks to me in French that rolls off his tongue like sugar beignets. The flower seller lives beside the streetcar tracks. On my way to visit them, I imagine the other lives that await me. I ride the subway home smelling of aftershave and sex. Head shops, massage parlors, strip clubs, pimps in platform shoes. Marjorie takes me to the Young Street Strip on my sweet 16th, introduces me to her friends. 14-year-olds whose pimps ply me with compliments. Pretty lady, what's your name? What's your game? Little girl, don't be shy. Don't walk away. We order clam chowder and French fries and look down on the strip. Neon lights and Sam the Record Man, cheap blowjobs and nickel bags. You can't get into the strip club across the street if you aren't 18, but you can suck a John's dick for $20 if you are 12. That's from the 70s when Young Street was a little different. I'm going to finish with a piece of nonfiction that was published this year in the Fiddlehead. It's called Fabric. 1968. My mother's antique Singer sewing machine pedals through the evenings. Crinolines and corduroy. The fabric of me is woven then. Weekends, my father dons the suits that spill out of his industrial faff and drives us across the Jacques Cartier Bridge in his 1964 Peugeot. Players' cigarettes dangling from the driver's window, kids skirmishing in the back seat. 1970. In new bell-bottoms, we trouble the summer afternoons. Our feet ping and clack on the railroad ties. We're fearless, away from our mother's watchful breasts, haranguing the streets at dusk. I trail behind the boys from the Catholic school. The new boy next door, third floor flat, defines me with a name, savoring the word on his tongue so that you know he learned it from his father. I linger at the bottom of our street until the sounds of dinner blanket the dusk, doors slamming, fathers howling, the slap of a leather belt against a boy's sweat-laced skin. I beg my mother to cut off the cumbersome length of my hair. She uses sewing shears and keeps the glossy length of braid in her top dresser drawer next to her 22-karat Indian gold earrings. My mother always has a place to put her ancestry. I do not know where to find mine. 1971. When my grandmother arrives at the end of summer, swathed in gauzy white cotton like a gift, 4 Trinidad expat families travel en masse to see the famous Niagara Falls for the first time. Posing by the retaining walls in our best clothes, pastel hues and paisley patterns, mini dresses and bell bottoms, I hide at the edge of the camera lens, far from my grandmother, who, in her uncommon clothes and orni, racks my efforts at assimilation. 1972. I am no part of their Quebec when my father joins the Anglo Exodus. But as soon as the Scarborough children spit me out, I look for myself in fleur-de-lis I draw in my notebooks and the French that still clings to my tongue. 1976. I keep my head down and beg my mother, but still she kneads and rolls, the scent of Saturday curries folding into my skin. On the bus, every day of the week, they hold their noses, though I cannot smell what they see. I learned to loathe the food that courses through my blood, the language my parents have forgotten how to speak, the skin that defines me. I cloak my skin with clothes I sew from pictures, cut out of magazines, just my skinny foot on the black cast iron treadle of the Singer sewing machine. But they call me Packy. I relinquish food and swim hollow-eyed through the halls of the high school. I weigh 81 pounds. 1993. There's a man that tries to tell me what to wear. He, my bare midriff, compels me with twists of my skin. But I'm descended from a long line of midriff bearers. My mother wore saris for special occasions, unfolding a flicker of brown midriff when she shifted in her chair, a golden shimmer of skin in the light from a television. Did she know how she dazzled? 2021. Still, I hide. Summer in the pandemic brings us out onto balconies. My neighbor slams his balcony door against the quick toxic smell I spray on a canvas. I apologize to the afternoon and to anyone who can hear, to the wasps that loiter on the pepper plant, then later to the night. I eschew the balcony, lower the volume of whatever I can think to, take cover in the familiar gloom of the living room. I am without the threads of history, unbound, and when the wind picks up with little to anchor me, I'm blown along the streets like a tattered piece of cloth. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. So there are some real oof lines in there, eh? Some real right to hear. So up next we have Camilla Esla. Did I say that right? Okay, we didn't have time for a pronunciation check. I'm used to meeting in a Zoom room before, just being like, oh. I would also like to mention that our last two readers, Camilla and Farzana, they have books up here. If after the show you would like to peruse their books and buy them to support Glad Day, the oldest LGBTQ bookstore in the world. Woo! So big hand for Glad Day. Support them, buy books, buy food, buy drinks. Party here. They're doing a screening of the last two episodes of A League of Their Own after this, if you want to stay for some baseball, queer baseball. Okay, so Camilla Esla is a feminist writer and queer woman of color. Her work has been featured on CBC Books, Ms. Magazine, and the Miramachi Reader. She's the author of Sister Seen, Sister Heard, and The Daughter Who Walked Away, which you can see here. Her novels explore the effects of bigotry, rape culture, and mental illness and queerphobia on Canadian women of color. There's some themes going on tonight, right? Yeah? All right. Yeah.
Thank you. Am I the right height? Look at that. Thank you to the Brockton Writers Series for Zana. And also it's a glad day for having us all here. It's such a wonderful group of talented writers. I am just blown away. I'm definitely walking away with some books. And of course, thank you to all for coming out. I'm Kimia Esla. I am a novelist. I'm also an essayist. And it's actually quite special for me to be a glad day because way back when I came out, I was 15, 16 years old. At that time, Glad Day was over on Yonge Street, if anyone remembers, right? Up the top of the stairs, right? It was a place where I was like, okay, I'm going in the door. This is it. I'm doing it. I'm growing up, right? And I would buy the magazines and like anything that would let me. And the guy at the counter didn't care, and he was smoking a cigarette. I was like, yes, that's back in the 90s. You could do that. Who knew? So this is really special being here. But so up front over here, you will see my 2022 novel. This is Sister Seen, Sister Heard. It is really about life after trauma. And it asks us difficult questions like, how can we support victims without blame, without guilt, without the constraints that we can put on them after they suffer? In my 2019 book, The Daughter Who Walked Away, it's more an exploration of the ties that bind us to family. And it looks to really explore the question of when is estrangement really the healthiest choice? So, you know, trauma, fiction, bigotry, these are a few of my favorite things. I'm rarely invited to dinner parties, but certainly I am not intent on making people uncomfortable, but I'm also not shy about it if it happens. And it doesn't take much really to make people uncomfortable, and especially when I talk about privilege. So, you know, we really dislike admitting that we are privileged. It's something in us that wants to believe that we have our present day success because of our stamina, our fortitude, our resilience of everything that we've put into our effort that has produced our work for us. But we definitely don't want to admit that it could be my race or my gender, my sexual orientation, or my religion. It can't be my physical features or my psychological makeup, right? We want to believe that it's really that I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. And unfortunately, the research has come out that that's not true. We don't have success in life because of our stick-to-itiveness, that we are actually, each of us treated differently based on who we are in the system that is founded on patriarchy and white supremacy and hate. And no one is unaffected. Even the people who benefit from systemic discrimination are affected. They are the privileged. And so last year, I don't know if any of you are familiar with a site called Medium. It's something writers, yeah, woo, Medium, okay. Yeah, you won't make any money out of it, but it's just fun to have other people write and read. And last year I wrote an essay and it was called White Husband Privilege, where I do and don't take my white man. And I just want to read a couple of parts of it. It was a longer essay, but I want to talk about this topic of privilege. So I'll just read you a little bit. I've got a white husband, blue eyes, pale skin. He uses $10 words. He drinks cider. His pants have a minimum of 6 pockets. And they all come in one color, beige. So no doubt my white husband is privileged. And when he speaks, people listen to him and they actually hear him. And even when I'm the one talking to them, they still respond to him. So when I dialogue with that male plumber or the male electrician, I ask my white husband to make himself scarce. I could take my money elsewhere, less racist place, so a less sexist place. But honestly, this kind of discrimination happens all the time, everywhere. I don't have the time to go looking for a new place to get my parts. So I prefer to make a stand. Now, the prejudice that fogs their perception, that keeps them from seeing what's right in front of them, first, they have to overcome their surprise that I'm articulate and I know what I'm talking about. And then the second is they have to digest their discomfort about serving a brown woman. Okay, so experience and exhaustion have taught me when to bring my white husband. For example, any visit to our son's school requires white male accompaniment. When my white husband appears at school to speak with the white female principal, he's treated like an involved and concerned parent. While I'm construed as reactive, demanding, hysterical. So when I visit the principal, my husband comes along as the supporting cast. He sits turned towards me so that when the principal speaks, she either has to speak to me or to the side of my husband's head. And he repeats what I say word for word in the show of solidarity. It's not hysterical when he says it. So this essay was received really positively. I heard many people describe very similar experiences. And then there were the ones who had a different opinion. Okay, just gonna read you a couple of these. They were so good. Bobby O said, I hate to tell you, really, does she? But I think the problem is gender more than race. My husband and I are both white. And the very situations that you describe happen to me daily. Louise said, part of it probably has to do more with the fact that your husband is male. What a nice guy said, it doesn't really matter what color you are. My white wife, we are both white, is often ignored by whatever color tradesperson. Okay, so these comments had me wondering whether there was like a shortage of prejudice, like demand overwhelming supply. Did I have to pick one form? Did I have to leave enough for others? Everyone could celebrate in some form of prejudice? Because what they wanted to inform me was that I was mistaken. I was the target of racism and not, of sexism and not racism. So I had to pick. And that this was somehow okay because similar discrimination had happened to a white woman. This logic, this need to make like tidy parcels of prejudice, it's unproductive, it's harmful, it's a game of make-believe. This logic is based on a myth of a post-racial world, the I don't see color world. I see color. I see dark color, I see light color, I see everything in the middle color. And to ignore color is to ignore privilege, to pretend the race and color are irrelevant to the human experience. To pretend that the experience of a white woman facing sexism is the same as a woman of color facing sexism. It's the same logic that leads mainstream media to persistently offer the white experience. the white family, the white doctor, the white group of friends, the white teen vampires. The white heterosexual, cisgendered, non-disabled experience is not universal, and it's not any more relatable than any other experience. Readers are smarter than we give them credit for. They hunger for authentic characters that haven't been whitewashed, that haven't been dehumanized, that haven't been simplified in some way. They want to see characters that represent themselves, like their friends, their family, in all of their intersectional glory. So, readers might not relate to every aspect of every character, but if I can get something out of Harry Potter, I think they'll be able to manage. So on that note, I say, let's write new narratives. Let's prioritize marginal authors. Let's read new stories. And let's admit, we have a long way to go. Thank you. I'm Kimia Esla, and it has been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Kimia. I have to say that Kimia came up to me at the beginning of this and said, "Is Farzana here? I can't wait to meet Farzana." Yeah. Do you know her? Yeah, I've met her. Kimia, I think you just kind of rewrote our Brockton mandate right there. That was a really succinct way of saying what we really, really aim to do in our work. And we're so grateful to be able to do it. And we're so grateful to hear all the words that we've heard tonight. And it is now my distinct pleasure to welcome Farzana Doctor, who is a Toronto-based author, activist, and registered social worker psychotherapist. She has published 4 critically acclaimed novels, including 7, which Ms. Magazine described as fully feminist and ambitiously bold, and was shortlisted for the Trillium and Evergreen Awards. Her new poetry collection, You Still Look the Same, which Quill and Choir has called a powerful and necessary collection that breaks silences, was just released in May 2022. That's this year. It's right here as well. Farzana, welcome back.
To do an adjustment. Thank you so much. How do I look from like here down? Because I'm still getting used to wearing pants at these kinds of things. It's so nice to be back. I retired from volunteering for the Brockton Writers Series in 2018, and I'm so glad to see it continue on, and it's vastly improved upon. Like, you figured out this hybrid thing, you've figured out how to get extra money. Like, I'm so proud. And thank you all for being here. It's really wonderful. So I'm going to be reading from You Still Look the Same, which is my most recent book. And this is, I call this the book of my 40s. I'm 51 right now. And my 40s were a decade that taught me a lot of things. I went through a major breakup. I published 3 books. I unearthed some old trauma. I dated really for the first time, but online dated. And then I fell in love. So each section is kind of divided up into those kinds of themes. And I'm going to read the opening part of the opening page of each section, which is a tongue-in-cheek therapy homework question that is answered in a haiku. And then I'll read a short poem from each section. So, 1, Therapy homework. Describe your world ending in as few words as possible. One day we left home, forgot to lock the front door. Terrible mistake. You know, this is what we missed with the virtual stuff, is all the energy and Dorian's laugh. Like we just really, I missed that. So this poem is called Lost in the Breakup. This is one of the sad ones. Okay. One blue pillowcase, part of a set. I've searched every musty closet. Where are all the good knives? I guess they were yours. Sorry I took them for granted. That old bike pump, gone. It was 5, no 6 months of hard pedaling before I bought a new one. A loaf pan, probably mine. After a dozen years, there's no way to know, but Jello, I've stopped baking. Pot holders gifted to us, charred from being left on a crimson burner the day you moved out. The entire top floor of our house disappeared. I still hear your footsteps overhead. And here's 2, therapy homework. Describe the process of middle-age self-searching in as few words as possible. 1 airline ticket, 2 years of online dating, but what did you find? Haiku is so fun. Working with constraint is so fun. Okay, so this is called Swipe Left. And how many of you are currently online dating? Oh, this is so cool. There's always, so how many of you have online dated in your life? Yeah, okay, so you know, you're gonna know. So the only completely true personal detail in this poem is the one detail about the dog. Swipe left. The research question. What's it like to be a straight girl looking for love? My design may be flawed, but after many dates, countless online interactions to understand your customs, I've reached an interim hypothesis. Your men are a problem. Perhaps not, that's not accurate. I have no control group and my subjectivity is the consistent dependent variable. My data suggests direct communication is not a norm. There is much baby, baby, smile for me, and jokes that go one beat too far. I don't profess expertise in linguistics. A colleague suggests my sample is skewed, that there are precisely 21 straight cis dudes ruining dating apps for everyone. I don't disagree with that theory, but doubt its accuracy. It's easy to recruit subjects. An ounce of ethanol, a single survey question. They'll follow you home. I stand by my method of observer immersion. An interesting finding, they think they are taking you to bed, even when it's your key turning the lock. My funding allows me to employ my dog, secondary researcher to assess subjects at door. I document carefully the length and quality of each sniffing episode and whether she rolls her eyes or sits for a treat. A confounding variable. Once and only once did she snarl at a tall white man who wore a fedora and smelled of desperation. I dropped him from the study. Quixotic reliability. Each and every time I introduce queer theory into the interview, the subjects reveal one identical porn fantasy. Take a minute to. All right. The most significant part of the experiment is not the most pleasurable, and vice versa. I'm not always certain how to code pillow talk. Qualitative data tumbles from lips, leaves stains on my pillowcases, outlines lingering for weeks. I've recorded 31% tenderness, combined with 66% white supremacy, then 72% mansplaining.
At the end of the project, I will deactivate my account, ghost my participants, won't present any findings. 3, therapy homework. Describe trauma and its sequelae in as few words as possible. Ask me in 2 days if I am really okay. Delayed reaction. This is called boundaries. Boundaries. Yours are tensor bandages, stretchy yet firm, holding you in, keeping tendons warm, injuries protected. Mine are Band-Aids from back of drawer, never the right size, adhesive dried up. They slip off at awkward moments. I wish sometimes, especially when, or perhaps before, I skinned a knee, sprained an ankle, I had your first aid kit. And here's the last section. For therapy homework. Describe healing and recovery in as few words as possible. Then, out of the blue, you followed me on Twitter. I no longer cared. It's really as simple as that, right? Okay, I'm going to end with a love poem, and this is for my partner, Rayan. It's called Learning Lebanese. He's Lebanese. Learning Lebanese. I've become a gatherer of your words, like how other lovers borrow clothing, dress the same. Something well-worn, familiar, your mother tongue, perhaps a forgotten dialect from the days before I left Zambia, my parents left India, our ancestors left Yemen. You mimic me too, trying on sentences that suit, phrases foreign before you left Liberia, your parents left Lebanon, unending cycles of leaving. You teach me Al-Fatiha's 7 ayats, prayers for our dead. I explain the phrase chosen family, hopes for community. Together we find common language for displacement, belonging, and home.
Oh, hey. Thank you so much. Always trust the dog. Always. True story. When I started volunteering, one of the things that I was going to do was help Farzana with the grant writing. And I'd never written a grant. And I was really nervous about it. And so she said, well, come on over, we'll talk about it. And you can meet my dog. And so I just thought that was really funny. And so if you write grants, you might get to meet a cool dog. So yeah, I'm going to take this and now is the question and answer period for our readers. So if you want to come up here, we can bring chairs too. If you want to sit up here, we're going to ask some questions and share some answers and maybe solve some problems. I don't know. Come on up.
Solve all the problems in the world.
Maybe just 1 or 2 problems.
Oh, she's going to sit on this one, right?
So I hope everybody's thinking up all their questions.
I'm sorry.
We're having. Yes. Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if the camera can get well, that's true. The table here.
Do you want to lower chair?
Yeah, we'll just move it a little bit. Do you want to be on the board? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I got you.
Thank you. That's nice. I'm like that.
So I'm gonna get both microphones into play because we're please repeat questions from the audience in the microphone for the online.
Yeah.
We're online.
Yes, more about that later. It's great news. So thank you all so much. That was amazing. And really enjoyable. It's really nice to be here in person. Do we have any questions so far from our audience here at Glad Day Bookshop, downtown Toronto, Wellesley and Church and Wellesley, the Village? We have a question.
It's more of a statement than a question. If you have trouble reading, holding a book like I do, I have a copy of the audio book. You Still Look the Same. So I can just turn on my phone and listen to you.
Oh, thanks for getting it.
Just for others.
There's a really great actor.
Microphone? Oh,
yes.
I think that's a
So
good idea
sorry.
to talk about audio.
There's is this on? No. There's a really great actor who narrated most of it. I only read a few of the poems, and I'm blanking, which happens a lot for me. I'm perimenopausal, so I blank on a lot of names. But she did a really big Olka Mohanty. She did a really great job with the narration. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question.
Hello, my name is Cyrene, and all of your works, the way you write, it was just the imagery and the vision, and it's just so beautiful, all of your works. But my question is for Camilla. Your two books both sound interesting to me. I find that they deal with a lot of social issues, whether it's somebody in a situation where they've been taken advantage of, or with a family estrangement. So I was just wondering, do you have a social background, or what do you do exactly other than writing?
Sorry, I'm all jokes, so here it goes. You're asking about sort of what my background is in terms of my knowledge of sort of social issues in order to whatever informs my writing. Okay, so first I have to make a joke. I am a brown woman. Every day is a social issue, but I grew up in Toronto, and I grew up in a poor community like the ghetto. And one of the great things about living in the ghetto is that it does not discriminate against all the people of the world. They'll take all the poor people, no matter what country you come from. So I got to go to school with kids from Poland, from back then it was a lot of like kids from Somalia, Jamaican, yeah, really all over the world, Bosnian, Serbian. And that has informed my ability to see myself as distinct from others. And I mean, I do joke that like I'm a brown woman, so that makes the issue of it. But now I live in a community that is predominantly white. You know, they're trying really hard. But it's very interesting how often I come across racism. I kind of pass because I am also in a relationship with a man and I have a child. So people think I'm heterosexual. So I don't, unless I out myself, I can hear homophobia, but I'm not experiencing it directly. But every single day I do feel like I'm seeing people in a state of being violent towards each other without recognizing that that's what they're doing, whether they are doing it to someone who has less money and they don't want that individual in their neighborhood, or they're doing it because the person has darker skin and they don't want that person living next door, and so on and so forth. I've also done a considerable amount of work in the community in terms of with different marginalized populations. when I was younger, before I joined the corporate workforce and made my money, bought my house and then left it. That really helped me to understand where people were coming from in terms of the types of marginalization that can be hidden that we don't even notice. I hope that answered your question. Should I pass it forward? That's a really good question, because I think that we could probably all, I think that your poems really touched on, how does like,
I think
now I'm
that's a
turning it this
theme.
over. Yes, I'm now turning this over.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak about some sort of social issues that inform you?
Sure. Life and my entire life. But I actually read the piece that you wrote in your blog, and I loved it because I have actually kept my mouth quiet a lot of my life. I was born in 1960 and grew up in a different, things were different, and now they're back there again, I would say. But every single moment of every single day would inform the work.
Yeah, same thing, life experience. I'm also a social worker by like training and day job, and that helps too. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if this really answers the question, but I'm just really interested in very complex women characters, ones where women of color are multifaceted and do terrible things and are funny, and are maybe not the best person or the best person, so a lot of my work is, or especially in fiction, is about that, trying to have characters that I can relate to in some ways, or where I can kind of see some elements from the women that I am very lucky to be to know. So see elements of them in that. Yeah.
Do you have a question? All right.
No, I was asking if there was anything. No, there's not. No, okay. Questions?
For
If
my
you want to know what we're wearing, this is a Ricky's. Sorry. I was just looking at you. Oh, you have it? All right, okay, great. Yeah,
everyone else wearing. Okay. There was a bunch of different forms today: poetry, nonfiction, fiction. Just on the top of your head, is there a genre that you haven't experimented with, that you haven't written in yet, that you would like to explore at some point in your writing careers?
That's a really great question.
Genre or form or anything.
I'm really the only, well, I guess kind of, I don't know. I think nonfiction, I think memoir is really interesting and very scary. So I'm very petrified of the idea, and I think I have a lot to sort through. And I was listening intently to some of you who were speaking, and then also to the key speaker tonight. So I think that that's something that makes me nervous, and I think that that's kind of important. I think that that intrigues me because of how it makes me feel, and also terrifies me and makes me feel like let's wait a few years. So yeah, I think that would be probably it for me. And I think to maybe explore that in a very experimental way would be very interesting. Yeah. So if anyone has any suggestions for reading materials, let me know.
My answer is also memoir. I've been reading a lot of memoir, and I have about like 55 pages written, and I got kind of stuck. And I'm still trying to figure out like what the themes are, but I've always been petrified of memoir as well, and just how exposing it all is. But the poetry collection, is, some of it is fictional, but it's got a little flavor of memoir as well. So I think I'm gathering my courage for memoir. Yeah.
Novels. I think maybe soon I'm going to retire, and then I might to focus on one piece for that long. I'd love to be. I love novels. I love reading them. But,
What are you retiring from?
oh, I work as a Link ESL instructor full time with the board, so 33 years in Link ESL Link. So I work with the TDSB, but it's full time, so it's teaching. I'm like just trying to get anything done, but a novel one day.
Yeah, 2 years.
She said 2 years. Be
2.5 years. Yeah.
2.5 years on the lookout now. I just like to be able to write something happy. I've tried, right?
Oh, yeah.
So many times I've tried to write something funny that wasn't also depressing, sad, and scary. Funny. So I would really I think that will be the end of my career, the day that I start writing and I'm like, everything was really fun. And the person just, maybe I'll do children's books at that point or something cheery maybe. But novels are a way of cheating, I think, for me, because they, the short story format is very difficult for me because you really have to be very succinct and capture a lot in a very short period of time. And the novel it's like cheating. It's just like having a long conversation, and you can just say a lot, and eventually the editor will, cut out a bunch and it'll work. But maybe even writing some really great jokes, I'd be happy with that. That'd be really good.
Stand-up comedy.
I would love to do that, but I can't really stay up past 9. I mean, I really do fall asleep. I think you were talking about rest. Every day I have a nap, every single day. And it's not even a little nap. It's like I'm out, the clothes come off. The bra's still on, but.
Do we have any more questions from our local resident audience here? Anything come in online yet? Do we have one at the back? We do. Oh my gosh, I'm coming at you.
We love the folks at the back as much as the front.
Once more for the people in the back. Here we go.
Thank you so much. I'm curious for each of the readers, if you would share who are some of the writers whose work you just enjoy the most or that inspires you, or if you prefer to answer the question this way, you're having a literary dinner party with writers living or dead, who would you invite?
I know, I would invite Zadie Smith.
Oh, yes.
But I like to read a lot. I like to read a lot, and I read a lot, and every book, whether it's my favorite book or not, teaches me something about, form, structure, all of that. So it's hard to think of a favorite, but yeah, Zadie Smith for dinner.
I don't have someone. Sorry, the question was who I would want to have for dinner. Who's great? Yeah. I don't really have a favorite writer, but there's someone that just came to mind, like Emmanuel Eduma, who wrote A Stranger's Pose, and he kind of wrote about his travels through Africa and his experiences on the continent, and included photographs and kind of his interviews with really prolific African filmmakers and thinkers. And so I think someone like that, I think it would be a little too much for me to have dinner with maybe the filmmakers and thinkers, but I think Emmanuel Eduma is such a great thinker, but also a great conversationalist, is what he conveys through the way he captures those experiences. So I feel like he would be kind of easy to speak to, and an interesting individual, as someone who's very well traveled and seems quite dynamic in his thinking. So yeah, it's a long answer, but Emmanuel Eduma, I would say.
Oh, you didn't hear us, we already answered.
I think the first thing that I thought of, I'm sure there's so many, because there's so many authors. And I'd love to do that with, but what popped into my head first, I was thinking Roxane Gay, so that would be good. But there's so many, I mean, it's really hard to narrow it down.
Oh my gosh, we should call her.
That's what I was gonna say.
You can say.
I know, well, yes, Roxane Gay, definitely, although that would be I don't think she would. I don't think she would bother. No, but I like that. I could pretend just to cut out of Roxane Gay would be good. I don't read. Oh, I know, I don't read. I rarely read. I don't know if anybody else identifies with this. I have like mental illness and a lot of like trauma from the past. And when I read things, I can't, like, they have to be pretty jolly for me not to get triggered. As soon as I read something that has any references to anything that's kind of like some sort of injustice, it sticks and it becomes a huge story in my head. And I'm like waking up in the middle of the night thinking, if only I could have saved that person from that thing that happened to them 30 years ago. So I don't do a lot of reading, but I do enjoy memoir, and I take in an audiobook format, and if it's not too graphic, and the author who I would love to like have dinner with, but would probably not like him very much afterwards, is David Sedaris, because he's just not, he's fun, but not fun. And Samantha Irby. Yes. Yeah, she's, again, I like her too. And again, that's a dark, cutting humor.
That is so great. It's a traditional Brockton Writers Series question to ask for one book recommendation from each of you. So maybe think of those in the back of your mind, just something you read or something you actually heard about that was really good, or something you want to read, something on your TBR. Think about that. Now that we know your favorite dinner, are they cooking the dinner? Like, that would be a different thing. Can you imagine an author?
It'd be a cookbook.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, I don't know, like, yeah. So I have one question instead of that question. We hear about the challenges of writing and the actual challenges of the practice of writing. What is the one most gratifying thing about writing for you? Is it like, I'll just leave it open. What's the one most gratifying thing about writing?
I took the mic thinking the question was going to be book suggestion. I'm like, oh. I think that's a really important question, actually. And I think for me, the most gratifying is, I don't know, there's just something about characters that I find so like delicious, like being able to explore a person's life and think about them and why they would do something and kind of like how they would say something. Their references, I love thinking about characters as references. Like, would they watch the show on Netflix, or would they be like too cool for it, but then like secretly watch it and then be like, I would never watch that. You know, it's just like really funny things like that. I think that's, in terms of my fiction, that's my favorite thing. Poetry is, I would say, like the main thing I write. So for poetry, I would say I feel like there's a healing aspect to, there's this like, not healing, but like a cleansing or a clarity. There's something about poetry where it's like, you still feel like everything is uncertain at the end of it. And that is the truth. And that's satisfying to kind of land on something that doesn't necessarily give you an answer to anything, but rather the experience of it is gratifying. Yeah, I would say for my fiction and my poetry, it's two different things. So
Let's speed it up. I was just wondering if it was gratifying for you to know that I'm over here dying to know what your protagonist did.
Oh.
What did she do that was so bad? Oh my God, what did she do? Tell me. Don't tell her.
Okay, I don't know, but it definitely involved murder.
Yeah, when in doubt, have them kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, the most gratifying thing is when I can really be in the zone, I can get really immersed in the work, and then like I solve a problem that I've been trying to figure out for a while in my head. Like, you know, when the doubt about that problem clears away and it's like, oh, I figured it out, or, you know, I like when you feel like some of your skill has actually come out. Yeah, because a lot of the time it's like you're just kind of sitting in this murky mess of it until it clarifies, right?
Yeah, definitely being in the zone. That's and then being in the zone of writing it, definitely it is a bit therapeutic, writing poetry or memoir. And what was the other thing? There was something else I was going to say. Oh, sharing it and getting a good response as opposed to not the bad ones, but that's good too, I suppose.
Ditto. There are many questions in my head about the motivations of real life people and why they do the things they do, and they tend to be around, I don't believe in good people and bad people, but you know, a person who's done something with good intentions and someone who does something with bad intentions, and on both sides of in that field. I want to know why. It's not productive, but it's more obsessive. It's just wanting to know why. What led the person to leave their home and, you know, travel thousands of miles away? What would cause that? Or why would this person, you know, cast away this relationship that could be so meaningful and things like that? And so in real life, I think about these things, and then I like to turn them into stories so that I can come up with a really plausible answer. And I try to come up with the most plausible, most human answer possible. And that helps me to kind of have more empathy for this person in real life, to, even though I don't know what their reason is, like, why is an alcoholic an alcoholic? I mean, I know it's a disease, but I still don't know why. And be able to write the story of an alcoholic gives me more compassion for them, because somehow I can just understand the possible reasons of why they did the things that they did. So.
All right, do we have any further questions? Thank you so much. That's a really wonderful breadth of reasons to love writing and feeling satisfied about writing. And any further questions here? All right, so do we have a one in mind, a book recommendation in mind? Also,
that's it. You've got one question.
Okay,
You have to
well.
pick which one. Pick your question.
I know, it's a tradition. It's a tradition which you can absent yourself from. It's okay.
All right,
Yeah, there's no pressure. Start.
I'll finish this up.
Are you familiar with Dr. Seuss? Oh, the places you'll go. It's very good. It's very good. It's really meaningful. 98.75% indeed. Almost any children's book is a way to find love for yourself, because you read a kid's book and the expectations are so low. Like, just love yourself, be nice to your sister, and everything else will be okay. So I would recommend any children's book, almost. After like 1995, maybe.
Well, there's so many books, so many great books. Since I spoke about Roxane Gay, I think when I read Hunger, I learned a lot about a lot of people and things, but so many great books. Also read Farzana's Seven too. It's a great book. Thank you.
Fortunately, 7 isn't tonight.
That's
They
okay.
sold out.
That's okay. You know, I has started to read children's books because I'm really curious about writing one day, and I feel like I need to do some research. And so I think that's really good advice. And you can also do a lot of healing. So if there's like a trauma issue that you're working on, chances are someone has written a children's book about that subject, and it can just like get to the heart of things in the way that self-help books do not. But I'm gonna think of one book, and it's actually a promo. So Tyler Pennock has a new poetry collection coming out. Going to be launching here October 3rd. It's called Blood, and you should check it out and come October 3rd.
Tyler's a
October
Brockton
3rd.
alum too, so yeah, so yes, love Tyler's work and support and yay.
That's October 3rd, everyone, October 3rd.
October 3rd.
October 3rd, October 3rd. Did you know October 3rd? I also have another, like a kind of a promo kind of, but I'm reading the advanced reading copy of it now, and it's incredible book. Bad Cree by Jessica Johns. She's an incredible Cree writer. She is amazing, and her book is amazing. So I think her book is coming out January. So look out for that. Yeah, it's a really fantastic book. All of the people who spoke today who have books as well. I don't have a book, but everyone else who does, their books. Ladan Osman, she's an amazing writer as well. She has several incredible books. I would suggest her books. Look out for October 3rd, and also for Jessica John's book coming out in January.
Thank you so much to all of our amazing writers. Give them a hand, everybody. So great. All right.
We also want to thank you, our audience, both here and online. Thank you so much to our volunteers. Thank you to the Ontario Arts Council. We're not contractually obligated to say it. We might be. No, thank you to the Ontario Arts Council. Thank you so much to Glad Day. Our next Brockton is November 9th. So mark your calendars with October 3rd and also November 9th. We will have on the stage for you that night, Emily Urquhart, Edwidge Jean-Pierre, Ayaz Pirani, and Marlo K. Shaw. We'll be once again in person and recording and streaming live on YouTube, and to keep up all of the good work that we did pivoting. And so we hope that we will see you there. Thank you again.